My wife cheated with my friend for 1 year. My kids abandoned me 8 years choosing the affair partner for money. But when his empire collapsed and my business took off, they came back begging. I said no, and what happened next left them speechless. I'm 58 years old. I own a pretty successful sports training business, and 8 years ago, my ex-wife destroyed my life with a year-long affair with a supposed college friend. The worst part wasn't that. I mean, it was horrible, but what really broke me was that my two kids, Brandon and Amanda, who were already adults at that point, decided to side with their mother and basically erased me from their lives for 8 full years. 8 years without seeing them, without talking to them, without meeting my grandchildren. And now, just when my business is taking off and we're planning to expand, suddenly they want to reconnect. They want me to be part of their lives again. The thing is, I'm not an idiot. And something didn't add up from the beginning with all this. But I need to tell this story from the start, because I'm still trying to process everything that happened and whether I did the right thing or not in how I handled things. When I discovered the thing with Deborah 8 years ago, I was 50 and she was 52. We had been married for like 28 years at that point. I worked as a baseball coach at a high school, made decent money but nothing special, the typical teacher's salary. Deborah worked part-time at a clothing store, mostly to keep herself busy because the kids were already grown. Brandon was like 26 and Amanda 24, both already living on their own and had their own lives. I thought we were fine. I mean, we weren't the perfect movie couple, but we got along well. Or so I thought. Turns out for a full year she had been seeing Franklin, a guy who was supposedly my college friend, someone I had lost touch with years ago, but she maintained the friendship, and I never thought anything weird about it because, I don't know, I trusted her completely. How stupid I was, right? I found out in the most cliché way possible. I found messages on her phone. She had left it on the kitchen table while she was showering, and I was just going to check the time because the phone was charging in the bedroom, and I saw a notification from Franklin that said something like, "Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again." My stomach dropped to the floor. I literally felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I opened the messages and there it all was. A full year of conversations, photos, plans to see each other, everything. I just stood there in the kitchen, unable to move, reading message after message, seeing how my wife of almost 3 decades was telling another man all the things she used to tell me years ago. When she came out of the shower and saw me with her phone in my hand, she didn't even try to deny it. She just said, "Stephen, we need to talk." And I responded, "No, we don't need to talk about anything. I want you out of this house right now." The next few days were a total disaster. She went to stay with her sister. I hired a lawyer the next day and started the divorce proceedings immediately. I wasn't going to stay in a marriage where I'd have been cheated on for a year, you know what I mean? A year isn't a mistake. It's not a drunken night that went wrong. It's a conscious and repeated decision to betray your partner over and over again. I told Brandon and Amanda what had happened, expecting them to support me, to understand why I was getting divorced. But instead, both of them told me not to be so hard on their mother, that she was going through a difficult time, that maybe if I had been more attentive, this wouldn't have happened. I mean, seriously? Were they blaming me for their mother's affair? Brandon, my oldest son, came to my apartment like 2 weeks after I moved out. He had to rent a small place near the school where I worked, and told me, "Dad, I know you're angry, but Mom needs you now. Don't make this harder for her than it already is." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him, "Your mother cheated on me for a year with Franklin. A full year, Brandon. Do you understand what that means?" And he responded, "Yes, Dad. I understand, but she's suffering a lot. She says she made a mistake and she regrets it." I exploded. I yelled at him that a year isn't a mistake, that if she really regretted it, she wouldn't have kept seeing him for so long, and that I wasn't going to give her the easy divorce she wanted. Brandon got up and told me, "If you're going to be like this, then I don't want to see you until you get over your anger." And he left, slamming the door. I didn't hear from him for 8 years after that conversation. Amanda was even worse. She was the baby of the family, had always been closer to Deborah than to me, like that mother-daughter relationship where they're best friends and tell each other everything. When I tried to talk to her about the divorce, she literally hung up the phone on me mid-explanation. She sent me a text message saying, I don't care what Mom did. You're being cruel and vengeful, and if you can't forgive her, then I can't forgive you either. That hurt more than anything else, more than the affair itself, I think. My own children were abandoning me because I didn't want to stay with a woman who had betrayed me. The truth is that in that moment, I felt like my world was completely falling apart. I lost my wife, my children, and almost lost my job too, because I couldn't concentrate on anything during those first months. The divorce took like 6 months to finalize. I fought for everything. Not because I wanted to take things from Deborah, but because I was so angry that I wanted her to feel at least a fraction of the pain I was feeling. In the end, we divided everything more or less equitably. We sold the house, and each kept their half. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Deborah married Franklin. 2 months. I mean, she didn't even wait a decent amount of time, which confirmed to me that they probably never stopped seeing each other even during the divorce process. Franklin had a furniture company. He wasn't a millionaire or anything, but he was doing, well, at that time, better than me definitely with my coach's salary. Brandon and Amanda started working at Franklin's company shortly after he married their mother. I guess he offered them positions there, and they happily accepted, because it paid more than what they were making at their previous jobs. 6 years ago, Brandon got married. I wasn't invited to the wedding. I found out from an aunt who saw the photos on Facebook. My son got married, and I didn't even know he had a serious girlfriend. 4 years ago, Amanda got married too. I wasn't invited either. In the photos I saw because yes, I stalked them on social media from fake accounts because I wanted to know about their lives, even though they didn't want me to know. Franklin walked Amanda down the aisle. That guy who had destroyed my marriage walked my daughter down the aisle in the place that belonged to me. I cried that night. I'm not going to lie. I cried like I hadn't cried since I got divorced. I felt completely alone, without family, without anyone. I kept working as a coach, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. I would just go, do my job, and return to my apartment to watch TV until I fell asleep. About 4 years ago, something changed for me. I was having beers with 2 friends of mine, guys I met at a gym, where I would train after work to stay in shape and have something to do with my free time. One of them, Mike, mentioned that he had always wanted to open a sports training center for youth, like a place where kids could train in various sports with professional coaches, not just the typical school classes. The other one, Jason, said he had some money saved up and that if we found a good location, he could invest. I was kind of drunk and said, "You know what? I have savings too. Why don't we do it?" And that's how it all started. The 3 of us put in money, we looked for a location, hired coaches, bought equipment, and opened Peak Performance Training 3.5 years ago. The first months were tough. Almost nobody came and we were losing money every month. But little by little, we started to have more clients. Parents started recommending the place, and suddenly we had waiting lists for some classes. I left my coaching job at the high school 2 years ago to dedicate myself full-time to the business, and it was the best decision of my life. Last year, we made more money than I had made in my entire career as a teacher. This year is going even better, and we're planning to open a second location in a nearby town because the demand is incredible. I'm 58 years old, and for the first time in my life, I have real money, like money to buy myself a new car without worrying, to go on vacation if I want, to live comfortably. The irony is that just when my life was finally improving after 8 years of misery, my children decided they wanted to talk to me again. It was in February of this year. I received a message from Brandon on Facebook saying, "Dad, I know it's been many years, but I'd like to talk to you. Can we meet?" I stared at the message for like an hour, not knowing what to do. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, tell him yes, that of course we could meet, that I missed him terribly. But another part of me, the part that was still angry after 8 years, was telling me that something didn't add up. Why now? Why after 8 years of complete silence did he decide he wanted to reconnect? I responded saying he could visit me at my house the following weekend. He arrived with his wife and his 2 children, a 5-year-old boy and a 1-year-old baby. My grandchildren. Children I didn't even know existed until that moment. The visit was awkward at first. Brandon introduced me to his wife as if I were a stranger. Like, "This is my dad, Stephen." And she shook my hand very formally. The kids didn't know who I was. The older one asked me if I was grandpa, and Brandon said, Yes, champ. This is Grandpa Stephen. It broke my heart. You know, meeting my grandchildren as if they were strangers, as if I shouldn't have been in their lives since they were born. We talked about superficial things for a while. He told me about his job at Franklin's company, about his house, about how the kids were doing. I told him about my business, about how I was finally doing well. I could see his eyes light up when I mentioned how successful the training center had become, and then came the real reason for his visit. Brandon told me, Dad, the truth is that besides reconnecting with you, I need to ask you a favor. My heart sank because I knew what was coming. He told me that he and Amanda had been talking and that they both wanted me to be part of their children's lives, that the kids deserved to know their grandfather, and that they regretted cutting off contact with me all these years. It sounded nice, right? But then he added, and we were also thinking that maybe you could help us financially with some things, now that you're doing so well. There it was. They didn't come because they missed me or because they really wanted to reconnect. They came because they found out I had money now. I asked him how they had found out about my business, and he got nervous. Said someone in the family had told them. Lie. I knew they had been investigating me. Probably asking people who knew both of us to find out how I was doing financially. I told them to leave. Brandon was surprised. He said, Dad, we just want you to be part of our lives. And I responded, No. You want my money. If you really wanted me to be part of your life, you would have come years ago when I was still in my small apartment, working as a coach. His wife was offended. Said I was being unfair. That Brandon had come with the best intentions. I laughed, like a bitter laugh because I couldn't believe they were trying to play me for a fool like that. I told them they had to leave my house and not contact me again unless they had genuine intentions to reconnect without expecting anything from me. Brandon called me bitter and left with his family. I blocked them on all social media and on my phone that same day. But I'm not stupid. I knew there was more to this story. I called my Aunt Clara, my mom's sister who had always stayed neutral during all the family drama and still talked to everyone. I asked her what was going on with Deborah and Franklin, why my children suddenly wanted to talk to me after 8 years. Clara sighed and told me everything. Franklin's furniture company had started going bad about 2 years ago. Online competition was killing them, and Franklin had made bad investment decisions. He was about to declare bankruptcy and sell the company to a larger company that would probably fire most of the staff, including Brandon and Amanda. I mean, my children didn't come because they missed me. They came because they were about to lose their jobs and needed my money to get ahead. 3 weeks after Brandon's visit, both of them showed up at my house, unannounced. I was in the yard trimming some bushes when I heard them knocking on the door insistently. I went to open it, and there they both were. Brandon and Amanda, she with her 6-month-old baby in her arms. They tried to come in, but I blocked the entrance. Amanda started crying, saying, Dad, please, we need to talk to you. We made a mistake by distancing ourselves, but we want to fix it. I told them I knew perfectly well what was happening with Franklin's company, that I knew they were desperate for money, and that I wasn't their personal bank. Brandon got angry, yelled at me that I was a terrible father, that they had only asked me for help like any child would ask their father, and that I was being vengeful about something that happened 8 years ago. That's when I lost my composure. I yelled back at them. I told them that they had abandoned me when I needed them most, that they had erased me from their lives for 8 full years, that I wasn't invited to their weddings, that I didn't meet my grandchildren when they were born, and that now that Franklin could no longer give them the comfortable life they wanted, they suddenly remembered they had a father. I told them, You're sellouts. You chose Franklin over me because he had money and a company, and now that his company is going bankrupt, you come crawling back. Amanda was sobbing, saying it wasn't like that they really wanted to reconnect. But I didn't believe them one bit. Brandon called me bitter again, said I clearly hadn't gotten over the divorce and was taking my rage out on them. I told them to leave and never come back, and I closed the door in their faces. I thought that would be it, but I was wrong. A week later, they showed up at my business, at peak performance, with all 3 grandchildren. They arrived like mid-afternoon, when I was in the office reviewing some papers with Mike and Jason. One of our receptionists called me, saying there was a family asking for me. When I came down and saw them, there with the kids, With Brandon carrying his baby and Amanda holding her older boy's hand, I knew exactly what they were doing. They were using the kids as an emotional shield, thinking I couldn't reject them if they brought my grandchildren. I told them to wait, went back to the office, and told Mike and Jason everything. They advised me to listen to them, but not to give them money without a clear plan, and without them demonstrating genuine intentions to reconnect. I made them wait like 40 minutes. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I needed to calm down and think about what I was going to tell them. When I finally came down, Brandon was furious about the wait. He complained that I had made them wait so long that it was disrespectful. I told him that they showed up unannounced at my workplace, that I was busy, and that if they wanted to talk, they should have made an appointment. Amanda begged me to help them, that Franklin had promised them they would always have work at his company, but now everything was falling apart, that they had mortgages to pay and children to feed, and that I was their father, that fathers are supposed to help their children when they need it. I told them the obvious, that where was I for 8 years when they got married, when they had children, when they supposedly needed me for all those important life things? I told them no, that I wasn't going to give them money, that they had made their decision 8 years ago to choose their mother and Franklin over me, and that now they would have to live with the consequences of that decision. Brandon exploded, started yelling at me in the middle of my own business, saying I was a horrible father, that Mom was right to cheat on me because I was probably a terrible husband too, that Franklin was more of a father to them than I had ever been. That hurt, I'm not going to lie. But it also made me realize I was right not to help them. I called security to escort them out of the building. I didn't hear anything from them for 2 months after that incident. Then I received an email from both of them, a long message where they basically admitted everything. They said I was right, that they had chosen their mother's side 8 years ago because Franklin had promised them well-paid jobs and financial security, something I, as a high school coach, could never give them. They admitted that when they found out my business was doing well, they thought I could finally help them the way Franklin had done, but better because I was more successful now than he was. They said they regretted how they had treated me, that they understood why I was angry, but that they hoped someday I could forgive them. The last part of the email said they were planning to start their own business together, something related to furniture too, but online, and that if I wanted to invest as a silent partner, they would be open to discussing it. There it was again, the money. Even in their supposedly sincere apology, they were still trying to get me to invest in something. I left the email unanswered for 2 more months. During that time, I talked with my therapist. Yes, I started going to therapy like 2 years ago, because after the divorce and losing my children, I fell into a pretty deep depression and needed professional help. My therapist helped me process all of this, made me see that part of me did want to meet my grandchildren, that I did want to have some kind of relationship with my children even after everything, but that I needed to establish clear boundaries and not let them use me just for my money. About a month ago, I invited them to dinner at my house. I made it very clear in the message that I was inviting them to dinner to talk, but that I wasn't going to invest in any business or give them money for anything. Brandon responded, first saying they accepted the invitation and that they just wanted the opportunity to start over. Amanda said the same thing. The dinner was weird, super awkward at first. They brought the kids again. I guess they thought it would help break the ice, and they were right. Seeing my grandchildren, playing with them a bit before dinner, reminded me of everything I had missed during 8 years because of their parents. Brandon's 5-year-old boy asked me if I was rich. Apparently they had told him that Grandpa Stephen had a lot of money. I told him I wasn't rich, but I was doing well, and that the most important thing wasn't money but family. Although it was ironic to say that, considering the situation. During dinner, we talked about everything that had happened. I told them how much it had hurt me that they chose Franklin over me, that they excluded me from their weddings, that they didn't let me meet my grandchildren when they were born. Brandon admitted they made the wrong decision, that at the time they thought being on their mother's side was the right thing because she seemed more vulnerable, more in need of support, and that Franklin offered stability I couldn't offer at that time. Amanda said that now that they're parents, they better understand what they did to me, that if their children ever treated them like that, they would be devastated. It was the first time in 8 years that I felt they were really being honest with me, that they weren't just saying what I wanted to hear to get money. I made it clear to them that I wasn't going to invest in their business, that if they wanted to start a business, they would have to do it alone or get investors elsewhere. Initially, they looked disappointed, but accepted my decision without fighting. I told them I was willing to start building a relationship again, but that it would take time, that I couldn't just forget 8 years of pain and abandonment overnight. Brandon asked me if I could ever forgive them completely, and I honestly told him I didn't know, that maybe yes and maybe no, but that I was willing to try if they demonstrated with actions, not just words, that they really wanted me in their lives. Amanda asked if they could bring the kids to visit me regularly, and I said yes, that I would really like to get to know my grandchildren even if it was late. Today, a month after that dinner, I've seen my grandchildren like 4 times. Brandon and Amanda bring them every weekend. We stay for a few hours. We play. We talk. It's being slow, like there's still tension and unresolved things. But it's a start, I guess. Last week, the 5-year-old boy asked me if I also worked for Grandpa Franklin, and when I told him no, that I had my own business, he asked me if he could visit it someday. I told him yes, that when he was a bit older, I would take him to see the training center. He got really excited about that, and seeing his happy little face made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Like hope, maybe, or something like that. I don't know if someday my relationship with Brandon and Amanda will be what it should have always been. Probably not. There's too much pain and too many lost years. But for now, this is enough.